This makes no sense. Why is Pauline a child, Nintendo? Sure, there's babies of other characters, but those are clearly established to be a part of prequels or time travel stories. There is just no explanation for why Pauline went from probably one of the oldest members of the main Mario cast besides the immortal goddess to a 13-year-old girl. And why did you choose a character who is present for one of the most pivotal moments for understanding the Mario timeline in the entire series? When I first saw Kid Pauline in that direct, I almost immediately made this video. But I stopped myself when I realized all Nintendo had to do was say the words time travel or Pauline Jr., and basically all of this would have gone away. But instead of that, they made basically no attempt at elaborating, and in place of any explanation, they made multiple decisions that raise even more questions. And I'm gonna attempt to answer all of those questions you probably asked today. Welcome to definitive evidence that every time I've Googled Kid Pauline has been for research purposes. Because I've solved Kid Pauline. For those of you who don't know much about this character, here is a quick history of Pauline. She made her first appearance in the original arcade Donkey Kong. That's right, this isn't Peach. Mario does in fact get around, only to then get friend-zoned every time. Pauline was initially just known as Lady, since Shigeru Miyamoto could only think of a name for the gorilla for some reason. After appearing in this game, Pauline disappeared. While she was referenced in some other games and media, she basically didn't do anything. She was in an episode of Saturday Supercade, appeared in a comic in a magazine, and in the official Mario manga, she appears on a single page, in which she just watches Mario get beat up by Donkey Kong and then rejects Mario's love instead, getting together with Donkey Kong.
Oh, I'm here to save you, Pauline. I made it to the top.
Ew. What's wrong with your face?
Guys, there's a lot of barrels.
Well, I've been having a blast up here.
Huh?
Don't you just love a man that's tall, dark, and handsome?
But I'm none of those things.
Oh, of course you aren't, silly. Talking about him. But this means, other than re-releases of the original Donkey Kong, she didn't appear in a video game for nearly 3 decades. Until she was brought back in a minor role for the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series in 2009. She was featured in a lot of these games, alongside the new modern-day redesign of Donkey Kong. Remember how this monkey's face looks? It's important. She was completely confined to this series for years, though. She was kept in complete obscurity until Nintendo realized that people were getting tired of Rosalina. The people needed a new female character for the Mario series to use for, you know.
We know?
You know.
What? Dude, stop, don't be weird.
And instead of putting work into a new character, they recycled, deciding to make Pauline a new mainstay member of the Mario cast. After her inclusion in Super Mario Odyssey, she's been featured in almost every game that Waluigi is in, which is the benchmark for being a Mario mainstay. She even briefly appeared in the Mario movie, which Waluigi didn't even make it into. And this has all culminated in her eventually starring in Donkey Kong Bananza as a 13-year-old. And you may be asking, how does a character with such a bare and uninteresting history, only ever appearing in 2 mainline Mario games prior to this, possibly destroy an entire timeline? Why couldn't Bananza just be a prequel? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you an elderly monkey with 37 results on Rule 34. Cranky Kong is an often confusing part of the Mario timeline. Cranky Kong was initially shown in his current appearance in Donkey Kong Country, but this is not his first appearance. The first time Cranky Kong ever appeared was in the original arcade Donkey Kong. This is not modern-day Donkey Kong. As established in numerous games and interviews, the original Donkey Kong, or Cranky Kong, is the grandfather of modern-day Donkey Kong. I know it's disputed whether Cranky Kong is his father or grandfather, but most recent sources say he is his grandfather, with the only exception being the Mario movie, which took its own liberties with the canon anyway. Regardless, during the development of the original Donkey Kong Country, the developers did originally intend for Donkey Kong to be the same as Donkey Kong from the arcade game. However, as they developed the game, they made the decision to give DK a brand new design. And because of this, they decided to make this Donkey Kong be considered a new character. And another character they made for the game, Cranky Kong, was then decided to be made the original Donkey Kong, irreparably changing the Mario timeline forever. But this makes the family tree of the Kongs go, Cranky Kong is the father of Donkey Kong Jr., who is the father of Donkey Kong III. To avoid confusion, I will always refer to this character as Cranky or Cranky Kong, this character as Junior, and this character as Donkey Kong III. Now, as you may have realized, we have found the problem. How is an adult Pauline here with Cranky Kong and a child Pauline here with Donkey Kong III? Without time travel, this is clearly impossible, especially when modern-day Donkey Kong has been shown with adult Pauline as well. Now, there's a few immediate options you may think of. First, this is a redesign that looks somewhere between Cranky Kong and the original arcade and Donkey Kong III. So maybe this game could star Cranky Kong and not Donkey Kong. Nope. If this was the case, everything would be solved. But nope. Cranky Kong is present in this game, as well as Diddy and Dixie Kong, making it clear that this definitively takes place during our current era of games. All they had to do was not include these three characters and we would have been fine. But here we are. Another option comes from the main villain of the game, Void Kong. He has an insane variety of magical powers that he uses throughout the game. Maybe one of them could have been used to de-age Pauline. I just don't buy this one. While Void Kong can do literally whatever the plot happens to need him to do, power over age is never established as an ability of his. And there are other instances where he definitely would have used it if he had it. I also just don't want this to be the case because it would cause irreparable damage to something very near and dear to me. Mario Rule 34. So, if this isn't Cranky Kong and this little girl has no reasonable way of being this adult woman, that leaves us with only one option. These two are not the same character. And Pauline herself may have given us the perfect way to solve this. Throughout Donkey Kong Bananza, there's a few times where Pauline mentions her grandmother. Pauline talks a decent amount about her personal life whenever you rest at a getaway. And while a lot of it isn't really anything, this grandmother seems very interesting. And by very interesting, I mean we learn one thing about her. She sings. Now, why would they mention Pauline having a grandmother unless it's important in some way? It's common knowledge among writers that giving a character a guardian or parental figure is generally not good for an adventure-based story, unless they have some greater role in the plot, because otherwise it's this tether attached to the character that makes them want to go home instead of adventure. So, what importance could this grandma who loves singing hold? Well, Pauline's grandmother must be none other than Pauline. I mean, why else would this grandmother be mentioned? There's only one character it could realistically be, especially with the mentioning that she also loves singing. And while other characters do sing, Pauline is the singer in the Mario universe. So clearly, similar to how this Cranky Kong is Donkey Kong III's grandpa, Lady here is Kid Pauline's grandmother. And therefore, it must also be the case that Jumpman here is Mario's grandfather, because otherwise time does not make sense in the slightest. See? All we gotta do is significantly multiply the number of characters in the series to understand the lore. A century from now, the lore will include 7 Waluigis. Now, you could still argue that this is still a pretty big leap in logic. I mean, why should we suddenly assume that this Pauline's grandmother is this Pauline from the arcade? Any details about this grandma are incredibly vague, and the only reason we've come to this conclusion is because it seems to make sense on a surface level, allowing us to half-ass an answer that technically makes sense to us. Well, we find something very interesting when we go to the planet's core. You see, throughout the game, outside of the main banana collectibles, you can also find fossils. They're used as an alternative form of currency, but that doesn't really matter. What actually matters is that they all are unique and have individual descriptions. And beyond implying that Professor Chops might have died,
He can't be gone. He just can't be. Come back. Come back.
regardless, the ones in the planet's core are all references to the original Donkey Kong game, which is super cool for the final area of a game. And very notably, some of the fossils are Pauline's items that are scattered around some of the stages in the original Donkey Kong. And their description reads, a fancy hat, purse, and parasol from days gone by. They may have been left behind by an elegant lady. All these items are from days gone by, therefore in the somewhat distant past, meaning those who lived in those days could be grandmothers, and they were left behind by an elegant lady, the very name Pauline was called in the original Donkey Kong. The wording here is so exact. It feels like Nintendo was trying to directly tell us that it is true that lady here is Kid Pauline's grandmother. It seems to fit together perfectly. A satisfying explanation that covers all the bases and lets us move on with our lives. Is how every single discussion on this topic ends, but I'm here to tell you this explanation does not work in the fucking slightest! Alright, this already raises a new question. Which of the Paulines are lady and which ones are Kid Pauline? Because the answer to that can significantly change the entire Mario timeline. So we know for a fact that the original Donkey Kong must be grandma, thanks to the fossil, but all other games are up in the air. The thing that immediately makes the most sense is that Bananza takes place before the majority of Mario games, since the story of the game revolves around Kid Pauline learning to sing, and it would make perfect sense for her to have taken these skills she's learned and eventually bring them to Mario Odyssey. All her skills ultimately culminating in Jump Up Superstar, which would make almost all Paulines in the modern games a grown-up Kid Pauline. This doesn't work at all. Remember earlier when I said that in order for this to work, Jumpman, who is this character in the original Donkey Kong, cannot be Mario. He would have to be his own character, same as Cranky Kong and the same as we are theorizing about Pauline. Because otherwise, Mario would have to be an insanely old man in the modern games, which we know he isn't. There is no world where these two characters are separate. Every single source you could possibly find where the question has been asked, is Jumpman the same as Mario? The answer has been yes. Jumpman and Mario just are the same character. If you can find me a single source saying otherwise, I'd love to see it. But as far as my research and knowledge goes, it doesn't exist. Which obviously creates a problem for us. How in the Mushroom Kingdom does Lady have a granddaughter that seems to be the same age as, if not older, than Mario? The only way for this explanation to work is for Lady Pauline to be a GILF. The only possible explanation, if you really want to stretch this to make it work, is Lady is just really old in this game and has had immaculate plastic surgery to look like this, and already has a daughter and a granddaughter, and is just catfishing Mario, who is 16 in this game, by the way. Oh, what's that? You didn't know Mario was 16 in the arcade game? He is. Still feeling good about this theory? I won't go into all the details here. You can watch my Mario timeline video for exactly why. But in order for Mario to be 24 years old, as he is stated to be in the modern games, and have Donkey Kong III be a full-grown adult in the modern games, which we know he must be in order to be the leader of the bunch, or the alpha, at least 8 years need to pass for a gorilla to become an adult. So Donkey Kong Jr. must have reached maturity right after these games and had Donkey Kong III immediately, and 8 years passed to reach the modern day games. So in order for this explanation to work, you already need to accept that this minimum 40-year-old, if you're willing to get a double team pregnancy involved, so probably 60 to 70-year-old, is grooming this 16-year-old despite all evidence entirely to the contrary. And that's the first reason this is dumb. Second reason, Mario vs. Donkey Kong. As mentioned earlier, Pauline plays a major role in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, where she gets kidnapped not by Cranky Kong this time, but modern day Donkey Kong III, as we can clearly tell by his design. Why would Donkey Kong III be maliciously kidnapping the adult version of a girl who saved his life at some point before this? Now you could debate whether this is Lady Pauline or Kid Pauline maybe. Please don't try to debate that. You will only end up saying the word GILF more. If we're assuming that Donkey Kong Bonanza took place before most modern Mario games, either way, Donkey Kong has already met this woman or this woman's grandchild and is still kidnapping her. There's just no world where this makes sense. Adding another reason Bonanza can't take place before most modern Mario games. And worst of all, the game made by the same development team as Donkey Kong Bonanza, known as Super Mario Odyssey itself, doesn't support this idea in the slightest. First off, the majority of New Donk City is very clearly designed as a general reference to the original Donkey Kong. I mean, the entire festival is just about the arcade game, very clearly meant to imply this Pauline is the same as Lady. But more importantly, this Pauline borderline directly claims to be Lady Pauline. In order to obtain one of the moons in Mario Odyssey, you need to have a conversation with Pauline. She'll ask you various questions, most of which are innocuous, but for one of the questions she asks, which of these things did I actually do a long time ago? And the answer is, captured by ape. Damn it, Pauline! Should have been Kid Bowsette. What were they thinking? Now, there is a potential explanation for this. Technically, Pauline was captured by the ape Void Kong during the events of Donkey Kong Bananza. So maybe this is what she's referring to in this voice line. But she was captured for like 2 seconds. This is honestly like the least interesting part of this journey. You're not going to mention becoming a rock, causing DK to entirely change species through song, or going to the center of the entire planet? Being captured by an ape should be the last thing you'd want to talk about. And if that's still not enough for you, immediately after this conversation, Pauline asks for a gift for her birthday. And there's 3 things you can give her: a hat, an umbrella, and a purse. The exact same 3 items from the arcade Donkey Kong. As much sense as it would make for Donkey Kong Bananza to take place before Mario Odyssey and the rest of the Mario games, there's just no world where that's the case. But maybe it can take place after most Mario games and the grandma theory can still work, right? To be fair, there are way less problems with this idea. It's actually much easier to reconcile with the timeline, in fact. There aren't any direct deconfirmations. In fact, DK seems to have clearly aged, looking more like Cranky Kong than himself now. So this really fits to have taken place in the future. New Donk City is also clearly much bigger than it was in Odyssey, and cities don't tend to shrink with time, they grow. So this feels like it technically works, even if it's still messy and doesn't have any hard evidence in favor of it. However, during the post-game of Bananza, there is something really odd that calls into question the entire grandma thing. For the post-game of Donkey Kong Bananza, you go back to the Elders of the Underground, these large old guys that give you the ability to turn into chimera monstrosities of nature called Bananzas. And these Elders now give you more difficult missions to complete, and to gain the ability to upgrade your Bananzas in the least helpful way.
I, the mighty ostrich elder, offer you a challenge. If you defeat the hardest level in the game, I will teach you to shit gold. That's not an exaggeration. That is actually the power-up they give you. That you shit gold if you beat the ostrich one. It's not useful like ever.
And you do all this for Kid Pauline, as after you returned her to the surface world at the end of the game, she decided to come back underground, shoves her feet in the camera, and tells DK she needs inspiration for a new song. So, by visiting these elders, she might be able to put together a perfect song for her performance. And she makes 0 progress for all 5 of the elders' challenges. Until you eventually get to the final one, that all of the elders are together for, and she says she's finally done it. She's come up with the perfect song, and she starts singing a tune. And this could be it. The thing that could confirm where this takes place in the timeline. If she sings, say, Jump Up Superstar, I'd have to throw out all of my criticisms about that theory. Or if she sings something new and original, it could confirm that it takes place after, and could be setting up for a future game. So what does she sing? She comes up with the song from the original arcade Donkey Kong? What the f*** does that mean? This is not an original song, Pauline. Why are you singing it as if it is? Why would they possibly do this? There is almost no way to reconcile this with the timeline. This song already exists, and the tune itself is present in numerous other songs throughout the games. Now, people might be quick to point out that this tune is also present in Jump Up Superstar very briefly. Maybe that's the part of the song she's singing. But the problem is, Jump Up Superstar does not contain the entire tune of the arcade Donkey Kong theme.
Odyssey, yes, see. Odyssey, yes, see. Odyssey, yes, see. Odyssey, yes, see.
It cuts off partway through every time, meaning she couldn't be singing Jump Up Superstar right now. And if the developers wanted us to think that she was coming up with Jump Up Superstar here, there's a whole song of lyrics that could tell us that. Why would they decide to just do this random part of the song that is more recognizable as the arcade game tune? Why would they do this? What are they trying to tell us? It seems like they're trying to tell us that Kid Pauline somehow sang the song in the original Donkey Kong. But that wouldn't work without time travel. Oh. Guys, time travel exists in the Mario universe. We've known this for years, ever since they started putting Baby Mario in games. These babies are all time-traveling versions of the Mario characters as their younger selves. There are numerous examples of time machines in Mario games, but most notably is the one invented by Professor Egad in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. This time machine is used by the babies to travel through time, so they can drive cars without a license, meaning that time travel is not only possible, but incredibly common. And we know that this game has to take place after the other Mario games. And we know that Kid Pauline was the one who came up with the song in the original Donkey Kong. So there's only one explanation: time travel. It all makes sense. It explains everything. You see, Pauline invents the Donkey Kong theme. She performs it at concerts and people attend them as she is a kid and her grandmother is the mayor, so a lot of politicians attend the concerts to get in good with the mayor. However, the concerts are all the same songs as her grandmother sings, and there are also a lot of weird rocks and animals at the concert, so they gain a reputation for being copycat concerts that feel like a zoo. So the attendance slowly starts to dwindle, disheartening Pauline. But when Kid Pauline is inevitably invited to one of the sporting or kart racing events due to her popularity, she discovers the time machines that are used for the babies and decides to send herself back in time. Now she gets to sing all of the songs her grandma sang for the first time, and she becomes the new singing superstar, Lady Pauline. And one day, just as her grandma was, she was kidnapped by an ape. An ape she recognizes as Donkey Kong, and not knowing what to do, she sings a song that she knows Donkey Kong likes, the one that he would one day help her create to try to calm him down. But for some reason, Donkey Kong doesn't respond to this song at all, because he's actually Cranky Kong. So she is saved by her much younger boyfriend at the time, Mario. However, once Mario saves her, he locks Donkey Kong up and abuses him, which is too much for Pauline to see one of her saviors beating up another, and so she leaves Mario. And similar to the ape thing being the same as her grandma, she then runs for mayor, just as her grandma did. She dyed her hair blonde for a very short amount of time, for no reason, just as her grandma did. She parties and races with Mario, just as her grandma did. She even gets kidnapped by Donkey Kong again, just as her grandma did. Except this time, this is the DK she actually knows, and is much better at diffusing the situation now. And most importantly, she even has a kid around the exact same time as her grandma. It's not like she was trying to do any of this, things just kept working out this way. She also realizes she's never crossed paths with or even seen her grandmother at all, which just seems so unlikely, as she knows she grew up in New Donk City as well. And then one day, her kid has another kid. She's filled with pride. What a beautiful moment it is. But when she is told the kid's name, she is stunned. We named her Pauline, after you, Mom, since she looks just like you. She goes lightheaded for a moment, as it all hits her at once. The reason she hasn't seen her grandmother, the reason everything seemed to line up so perfectly with her grandma's life, it's because she is her own grandmother. And it just made more and more sense as the kid got older. She was the exact image of her grandmother, and not even a spitting image. They are the exact same. They move the same, they have the same eyes, the same hair, the same ears. And most importantly, they have the same love for music and the same beautiful voice. Pauline has created a time loop, causing her to be her own grandmother. It all makes sense. This explains everything. Why there are two Paulines that seem to be identical. Why Bananza seems to clearly be implying that Kid Pauline is going to grow up to become adult Pauline and star in Odyssey, but the game can't take place before Mario Odyssey. It explains Donkey Kong and Pauline's insanely inconsistent relationship over the years. It even explains the nonsensical post-game ending of Donkey Kong Bananza, something I haven't seen a single satisfying explanation for. I have been thinking about this non-stop since Kid Pauline was revealed, and I haven't been satisfied by a single theory I've heard until I came up with this one. Call me crazy, many have before, but I truly think the only way to reconcile all of the inconsistencies is for Pauline to be her own grandmother. It makes sense, and there isn't really any evidence directly against it. And even if there were, does it come close to the evidence against any other theory on the matter? Please, in the comments, challenge this theory, or give your interpretation of this whole thing. As someone who is oddly passionate about the Mario lore, I can't wait to discuss it with you guys down there, or in the new Discord server I've created for the community. And with that, I've been PM Jared, answering a question you've probably asked, and I'll see you next time.
Hold on, what's that string in the corner going to?
Oh, it's just more evidence in favor of my theory.
What is it, Jared? Dude.
It's to help illustrate my point.
Video's up. Just throw it away. Like, it's weird, man.
Okay.